Welcome back, focused learners, to another deep dive on the explainer. Today, we're taking a slightly different approach. Usually we're out here synthesizing massive reports, sprawling data sets, or those really dense research papers. But right now, we are going to do a forensic deconstruction of literally the absolute smallest unit of evidence. We're looking at a single isolated fragment of an audio transcript. Now, I'll be honest, the tone of today's explainer is naturally quite grave given the subject matter, but I need you highly engaged. We're going to unpack how a microscopic piece of data can completely shift its shape depending on the structural context built around it. In a courtroom, a single sentence can be the literal difference between reasonable doubt and a conviction. It's the hinge upon which a person's entire life might pivot. Forensic linguistics, it isn't just about reading transcripts. It's about dissecting intent, tone, the whole environment. So for the next few minutes, we're going to step into the shoes of courtroom analysts, dissecting a fragment so small it almost vanishes on the page, yet so incredibly heavy it anchors an entire trial.
Okay, let's dive into this. 6 words. Let's get you back inside that. If you just strip away all the context, this fragment kind of hangs in the air with a stark, almost dizzying ambiguity. Grammatically speaking, it's a simple imperative, right? Maybe a suggestion or a mild command. It's an incredibly casual construction. It sounds like something a sports coach might say during a drill, or maybe a friend helping someone into a complicated piece of camping gear. Could even be a parent talking to a kid. The language is super colloquial. It's an instruction, sure, a directive, but it's wrapped in that collective pronoun let's, let us. It implies a shared activity, a cooperative effort. Honestly, there is absolutely no inherent malice in these 6 words on their own. They're totally ordinary, but as you know in the world of forensic evidence, ordinary words can carry terrifying weight when we pull back the curtain on the setting where they were actually spoken. Words are basically just empty vessels, and context is the fluid that fills them.
And there is the curtain being pulled back. Just let the absolute whiplash of that context sink in for a second. We transition from a casual, perhaps even helpful phrase to this: Treadmill abuse, murder trial. This is the exact context provided by the source material's title. Those seemingly casual spoken words we were literally just analyzing? Yeah, they aren't from a friendly workout or a mundane weekend activity. No, they are an official piece of evidence presented in a murder proceeding. The brutal reality of this information completely shatters that harmless ambiguity we just looked at. We are no longer talking about a benign instruction, we're looking at the focal point of a homicide investigation centering on abuse. When a jury hears these words, they definitely aren't thinking of a casual weekend activity. They're tasked with determining if these words represent the final, tragic moments of a human life. And that gap, that huge gap between mundane language and the catastrophic reality of a murder charge, well, that is exactly where forensic analysts do their most critical work.
And this brilliantly illustrates how metadata really anchors raw evidence to reality. Let's methodically lay out the unembellished facts we have from the source broadcast. First off, this originates from court TV, which means these words were deemed legally relevant and admissible in a court of law. Second, this is an audio transcript derived specifically from a video evidence presentation shown to a courtroom. Third, the location of this video is explicitly stated to be a gym. And finally, the entire legal proceeding centers on the concept of treadmill abuse. By mapping out these specific data points, we kind of ground ourselves in the factual architecture of the trial. We aren't just guessing here. We're looking at the precise parameters that the legal system and the broadcaster have placed around this audio snippet. Metadata removes the ambiguity of the casual ear, and it replaces it with hard, forensic boundaries. Knowing this is a video presentation means the jury has visual cues we currently lack in this pure audio transcript. Knowing the location grounds the timeline. Every single bullet point here tightens the net around that ambiguous 6-word phrase, stripping away its innocence and forcing us to evaluate it as a potential instrument of harm.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark, tragic power dynamic it introduces. The source explicitly names these 2 roles, defendant and victim. In any courtroom explainer, we obviously have to remain entirely neutral and factual, looking only at the structure of the information. And structurally, the broadcast title forces us to view the 6-word quote through the lens of a devastating binary. For a jury, understanding these roles is the foundational filter through which all evidence is processed. A trial is inherently a narrative of conflict. Somewhere in the video evidence being presented, this dynamic is playing out. One person is legally designated as the victim of a fatal event, and another is designated as the defendant facing the ultimate charge. So when you have a directive like, let's get you back inside that, you immediately have to ask yourself, which side of this profound power imbalance is speaking and which side is being spoken to? If the defendant is speaking, is it a threat? If the victim is speaking, is it compliance or maybe desperation? The words themselves don't change, but their legal and emotional trajectory shifts entirely based on who is assigned to which role in that exact moment.
Let's move to and see how this builds our understanding of the spatial reality of the evidence. We know the roles, and now we re-emphasize the stage, a gym. Just think about the cultural associations of a gym for a second. It's a place of public visibility, self-improvement, health, routine. It's an everyday, highly mundane environment. Yet, the evidence presented in this trial transforms this highly relatable public space into the chilling backdrop of a crime scene. Psychologically, it's profoundly unsettling when violence intrudes upon the mundane, right? Because it violates our fundamental sense of safety. The juxtaposition is just jarring. The video captures the defendant and the victim together in this brightly lit, common environment, engaging with something as ubiquitous as a treadmill, but the outcome brings us to a murder trial. The space itself becomes a silent, mechanical witness to the abuse referenced in the broadcast. The contrast between the brightly lit pursuit of health and the dark reality of a legal proceeding absolutely amplifies the gravity of the audio transcript.
So, the crucial point is how our perception of evidence evolves. We bring the narrative full circle. Listen to these exact 6 words again. Let's get you back inside that. When we started this explainer, they were empty, casual, maybe even helpful. But now that you understand the grim reality of the court TV broadcast, the fatal power dynamic of defendant and victim, the context of treadmill abuse, and the setting of the gym, these words take on a profoundly dark and commanding resonance. They are no longer floating in a vacuum, they're firmly anchored to a tragedy. The collective "let's" no longer feels cooperative, it feels coercive. The instruction feels like a mandate. It sounds like control. And guys, this is the very essence of forensic analysis. Understanding that words are never just words. They are the artifacts of human behavior in a highly specific, highly consequential environment.
Which leaves us with the ultimate, terrifying ambiguity of the evidence, and the question I really want to leave you with today. Listen to the very last word of that phrase, that. Let's get you back inside that. In grammar, that is a demonstrative pronoun. It points to something specific. But without seeing the video, relying solely on the spoken transcript presented in the trial, we are completely in the dark here. What is the physical object, the situation, or the piece of equipment being referred to? Does that refer to the treadmill itself? To a specific speed setting, to a state of exhaustion, to a physical enclosure within the gym? The entire weight of the legal argument, the monumental difference between an innocent coaching cue and a piece of damning evidence in a murder trial, hinges entirely on the visual context of that single 4-letter word. In the courtroom, ambiguity is the absolute enemy of certainty, and right here, a single word holds the balance of a life. And that is the true, staggering power of forensic analysis. Thank you for joining me for this focused explainer, and keep asking those hard questions.